The world is waiting for Trump's speech. Secret details of the Kursk operation from Sersky and Apple Feast. This is TSN Online. My name is Nada Ostrovska. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure to do it. Give this video a like and comment on what impressed you the most in this episode. Let's get started. Vacationers killed in ruins at the site of the resort.
There were no soldiers, no military, no one at all. Only children were there with their families.
In Zaporizhia, aerial bombs destroyed a country complex and killed 2 people. A child is in critical condition. How did it all happen? TSN will tell you. A high-profile guest from America in the Kremlin. What did Vidkov and Putin talk about for 3 hours, and what are Ukraine's expectations?
He is very well informed. He knows about the Russian strike.
After his special envoy's visit to Moscow, Donald Trump announced a statement. Mass poisoning at a children's camp in the Lviv region.
Everyone started throwing up, so then I started throwing up too.
Parents are outraged by the administration's silence. The police have intervened in the situation. What consequences do the culprits face, and how many victims are there already? A barbaric strike on the Zaporizhia district. At 6 in the morning, the enemy attacked a recreation base in the village of Kanevsk. Families with children were staying there. The enemy struck at least 4 times. Many people were still asleep at that time. 2 people were killed, 12 were injured, and 9 were hospitalized. Among them are 2 minors. 1 child is in serious condition. This was reported by the spokesperson of the Zaporizhia Regional Military Administration, Alexander Kovalenko. The destruction is extensive. At least 9 single-story houses were damaged, and dozens of cars were destroyed. TSN correspondent Kira Oves visited the site and will tell us more.
We are currently at a recreation center. As you can see, it has been turned into ruins as a result of the Russian strike. There are no military facilities nearby. But it was this recreation center that the enemy chose to attack, hitting it with at least 4 aerial bombs. We managed to talk to the center's security guard, Mr. Alexander, and his wife. They say that at the time of the strike, 23 people were vacationing at the center.
I heard something flying, and there was this kind of whistling sound. I just dropped down right there. The first hit, everything started collapsing. Then the second hit. And after, about 5 seconds later, there was a third one. I hit the ground, and then there were 2 more strikes. So when I got up, everything was jammed up. I crawled out through a hole over there, and then I heard people shouting, "Help!"
I called my husband to ask if it was at their place or not. He said, "Over here. Excuse my language. It's a total mess. I'm trying to get out." He was trying to get out of there because the guardhouse had been buried. At that moment, he was still there, and then I called the kids and we came here because he needed his medicine.
According to Mr. Alexander, the 2 people who died were the ones who ran out to check on their cars during the attack. Fires broke out at the site of the strike, and one of the cars caught fire as well. At that point, emergency workers had already quickly put out all the fires. Right after the strike, locals rushed to the resort with tourniquets and gave first aid. 9 people had to be hospitalized. 1 child is in serious condition.
There were no soldiers, no military, no one at all. It was just kids with their families and, a group of friends.
We ourselves were vacationing here. We really liked it here. We had everything we needed, all the amenities, the pool, all kinds of cultural activities. But now, this is how it is.
As a result of a strike on the country complex, the buildings where people were relaxing have been destroyed. There is blood and shards of glass everywhere. Cars have been smashed. There are almost no people left here now. The vacationers who weren't injured left right away, as soon as the ambulances took away the wounded. Kira Oves, Andrei Kapovka, Zaporizhia, TSN 1+1.
A 38-year-old man was killed as a result of an enemy attack on Stepnohursk in the Zaporizhia region. The Russians struck a residential area with an FPV drone. 1 dead and 7 wounded in Donetsk region. In Pokrovsk, the occupiers killed a local resident and injured 3 others. A private home was damaged. The Russians also struck the private sector of Konstantinivka. 3 city residents were injured. Nearly 40 homes and a church were destroyed. There is also a person wounded by a Russian drone in Zirign. In Kharkiv, a Russian drone hit a gas station. A 20-year-old woman who was nearby was injured. The second strike hit the same district. The drone struck the road surface. Windows were shattered in neighboring buildings. In the morning, 6 people were wounded in Kherson and its suburbs. Russian forces targeted critical and social infrastructure, residential neighborhoods, and garden communities. The Nikopol district in Dnipropetrovsk region endured nearly 20 attacks. It was hit by drones and artillery. A private house caught fire, and the business was affected. A UAV struck the Mazivska community. An infrastructure facility there was damaged. In Odessa region, the Russians attacked a compressor station of the gas transmission system, which supplies fuel to Ukraine. This was reported by the Ministry of Energy. This station is located near the border with Romania, and it is part of the route for liquefied gas coming to us from Greece via the Trans-Balkan pipeline. By the way, this same route has already been used to deliver fuel from the USA and for test shipments from Azerbaijan. Specialists are currently working at the site of the Russian attack. They are assessing the extent of the damage, said Svetlana Hrinchuk, Ukraine's Minister of Energy.
This is a clear and understandable signal for all of Europe, which plans to completely abandon Russian natural gas by 2027. The massive Russian drone attack on a key compressor station of the Trans-Balkan route shows that Moscow will use all available means and levers to destroy the energy independence of Europeans and alternative gas supply routes. If Russian forces are allowed to strike our vital energy infrastructure and crucial gas routes with complete impunity, then absolutely no infrastructure facility across the entirety of Europe will be truly safe.
The main intelligence directorate has released footage of a unique and remarkably daring operation in the Sumy region. The result was at least 300 Russians killed and more than 500 wounded. Our intelligence officers entered the enemy's rear, cleared out the occupiers' positions, and managed to secure their hold. In this way, the Special Unit Timur fighters prevented the Russians from advancing in the Sumy region. Enemy radio intercepts indicate that the invaders are refusing to follow orders and launch assaults on our positions. As for other areas of the front, the most difficult situation right now is in the Lyman and Pokrovsk directions. Deep state analysts report that the enemy has occupied Popovyar and also advanced near Toretsk and Poltavka in the Donetsk region. A year of a daring operation. On this day a year ago, Ukrainian troops began an offensive in the Kursk region. This was the first time in history that a non-nuclear state brought the war onto the territory of a nuclear adversary. The start of the operation in Sydza and neighboring villages came as a surprise both to the enemy and to Ukrainians. Sydza itself became the most popular frontline spot among foreign and Ukrainian journalists. The beginning of the operation was carried out under heightened secrecy. More than 1,000 prisoners were captured and exchanges were resumed. The risky operation helped divert enemy troops from other directions. It was possible to halt the offensive in Donetsk and Kharkiv regions and disrupt the enemy's plans. For the first time, Russia was forced to deploy a foreign contingent, namely North Korean troops. Heavy fighting for the Kursk region and neighboring Sumy region is still ongoing. Ukrainian defenders are holding a small part of Russian territory.
In this situation, we had to act, unconventionally. We needed to make some unexpected move, that is, to strike a blow that would disrupt all their plans. That's why, at first, this was planned as a deep raid. Well, of course, it was unexpected, because this was the first time Russia used troops from another country on its own territory, and specifically North Koreans. Moreover, such groups were formed right away. First and foremost, I am a military man, and I didn't have time for any other emotions. I was more interested in this territory from the perspective of conducting military operations.
A meeting on which the next steps of the United States will depend. In Moscow, negotiations between the representative of the U.S. President, Steve Witkoff, and Putin have concluded. They lasted 3 hours. Trump's representative left the Kremlin without comment. In Moscow, the conversation was described as constructive. President Trump previously noted that Washington's further actions will depend precisely on this communication. According to reports, he plans to address the nation from the Oval Office today at 11:30 p.m. Kiev time. Putin will most likely reject Trump's ultimatum to end the war in Ukraine, the deadline for which expires on August 8th. This was reported by Reuters, citing its own sources. On Tuesday, the U.S. president spoke by phone with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The White House remains silent on this matter, but the president of Ukraine shared some details of the conversation. TSN's own correspondent, Usha Olga Koshelenko, has the details.
This will already be the 5th personal meeting between U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Vladimir Putin. Unlike the previous ones, this meeting is taking place against a backdrop of heightened tensions in relations. The President of the United States has set a deadline of August 8th for Russia to cease fire. In response to the provocative rhetoric of Russian Security Council Deputy Chairman Dmitry Medvedev, Donald Trump demonstratively moved 2 American nuclear submarines closer to Russia. Witkoff flew to Moscow again at the invitation of the Russian side, the American leader said, specifying that based on the results of this meeting, he would make a decision regarding sanctions against Russia. However, when asked whether he still supports the idea of 100% tariffs on secondary trade with Russia, as he stated in July, he somewhat backtracked.
Well, I never set a percentage, but we will be doing quite a lot. We'll see what happens over the next fairly short period of time. We'll see what happens. I know they have a meeting tomorrow. We have a meeting with Russia tomorrow. We'll see what happens. We'll make that decision then.
What is Putin's mood? Sources in the global media give conflicting assessments. Yes, Bloomberg claims that the Kremlin is considering a ceasefire in the air as a concession to Trump, meaning they are open to the possibility of not using drones and missiles if Ukraine agrees to do the same. At the same time, Reuters sources assure that the Russian General Staff is promising Putin that the Ukrainian front will collapse in 2 or 3 months, so there is no reason for a truce. On Tuesday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had a phone conversation with Trump. The White House did not make any statements regarding this. Zelensky spoke about his conversation with Trump in his evening address.
He is very well informed. He knows about the Russian strikes, knows about the situation at the front, about how the Russians are now trying to make their attacks more intense. We in Ukraine fully support the American proposal for an immediate ceasefire. We have already tried many different formats for how to stop the fighting, how to stop the killings. We have talked and proposed to Russia a silence in the skies, no such strikes, missiles, drones, and in general no attacks on civilian infrastructure, and specifically no strikes on the energy sector. All of this was violated by the Russians, and in a very cynical way.
One of the main levers of pressure on Russia is the price cap on Russian oil, says Zelensky. Trump said the same thing recently in an interview with CNBC. A further $10 drop in the price of Russian oil per barrel will leave Putin with no choice because, supposedly, his economy is in terrible shape. The main buyers of Russian energy resources remain China and India. For the latter, Trump has already raised tariffs on the resale of Russian hydrocarbons on the open market. Delhi was outraged because the states themselves supposedly trade with the Russians. India claims that the United States imports Russian uranium, chemicals, and fertilizers, while at the same time criticizing their import of energy resources.
I don't know anything about that. I'll have to check on that. We'll get back to you later.
At the same time, the United States continues to sell weapons to its European partners, who in turn supply them to Ukraine. The Netherlands was the first to make a purchase worth €500 million. Next, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark made purchases totaling another $500 million. This includes, in particular, the acquisition of missiles for Patriot air defense systems, Zelensky said, and he thanked all the partners and personally NATO Secretary General Ruda for streamlining the process. From Washington, United States, Olga Koshelenko, Maxim Shinkarenko, TSN 1+1.
And it has become known how Donald Trump will punish India for refusing to stop buying Russian oil. The U.S. president threatened New Delhi with additional tariffs, and now we officially know that they will amount to 25%. The corresponding decree is already available on the White House website. The new tariffs will take effect on September 17th, and they will apply to Indian goods imported into America. Earlier, Donald Trump urged India to stop buying Russian oil, but the authorities there refused, as they make significant profits from reselling fuel from the aggressor country. So, what are your hopes and expectations for Trump's speech? Share your thoughts in the comments under this broadcast on YouTube, and of course, don't forget to like the video. It's very important to us. Meanwhile, I'll continue with the TSN broadcast. The United States has approved the sale of services to Ukraine for the repair of M777 howitzers. The total value of the package is $203.5 million. The U.S. State Department reported that the first part of the contract includes the sale of military equipment to Ukraine, repair services, and support for the howitzers and related equipment. The second contract, worth $99.5 million, provides for transportation and logistics services. The main contractor will be selected from among the approved U.S. suppliers. As clarified in Washington, this agreement will contribute to achieving the foreign policy and national security goals of the United States by enhancing the security of the partner country, since it is a driving force for political stability and economic progress in Europe. Ethiopia has refused Russia's request to lease passenger planes. The national carrier stated directly, no agreement was reached because Moscow is under sanctions. The supply of new aircraft to the aggressor country was restricted after the full-scale invasion. Russians have also faced difficulties repairing the aircraft they already have. As a result, there have already been several dangerous incidents during passenger flights in the aggressor country. To ease the situation, Moscow turned to negotiations with the Ethiopian authorities. They wanted to lease not only planes from them, but also crews and a range of services, including maintenance. Earlier, the media remind us Russia had unsuccessfully made similar offers to Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Qatar. In Ethiopia, the press notes, most of the planes are leased, so they would have had to get permission from the owners. However, Moscow has already been refused, with the explanation that sanctions are in place and that they themselves lack enough planes for their own needs. Poland has officially received a new president. Karol Nawrocki has taken the oath as head of state. The inauguration ceremony was held in the Polish Sejm. Nawrocki replaced Andrzej Duda, who had led the country for 2 terms. The new president of Poland, known as a Eurosceptic, once fought against the so-called Banderite ideology, promised not to allow the Ukrainization of Poland, set conditions for Kiev's accession to the EU, and even pledged to block Ukraine's admission to NATO. At the end of July, the Polish politician had a conversation with the president of Ukraine. Karol Nawrocki emphasized that Kiev can continue to count on Warsaw's support amid Russian aggression, and that historical issues will remain a priority for politicians in relations with Ukraine.